So if you have an effective platform that allows you to build really compelling, personalized campaigns that reach out to the right candidate, either at the right time, like just in time recruitment, or just long term to build those relationships, that changes the game because it no longer has to be manual.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenly, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. And today's actually a pretty exciting day for us. Matt and I were just talking about this. We have officially surpassed 2,500 downloads and we've only aired 27 episodes. So thanks to all of you who've been listening, who've been sharing. It's definitely exciting to see that you all are getting value out of it. So hope to keep the momentum rolling with this. For those of you who are new here, we like to break this show down essentially as like shows within a show. So sometimes we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space. They're going to teach you how to do something that's helped them be successful. Other days we'll cover trending topics, items that recruiters are talking about or will be very soon and what those mean for them. Come by every Tuesday. We drop a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that you can start using to drive better results in your day-to-day as soon as you finish listening. Every now and then we open it up for Q&A. Y'all can drop in questions for us that you'd like to hear us take on. So send those over to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally you'll hear a mic drop episode like today from Matt where he comes by and he either shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space or I grill him a little bit on, which I'll tease out for you in just a moment. So that is a big part of today's episode. And I can't wait to exploit his knowledge in this one. Fun fact, he's told me this way too many times, and I'm so glad to share it with you all. Do you know that Matt has had over 7,000 conversations with recruiters? And the majority of those have often revolved around the tech that they use as part of their jobs. So today I'm going to put him on the hot seat, and we're going to go through 5 questions that you should be asking yourself about the recruiting tech that you use as we head into 2024. So Matt, are you ready to be grilled?
Not ready yet, Sam. And the people laugh and there's no possible way 7,000 plus calls, but there's or meetings. It's no joke. Yeah. But yeah, I'm ready, Sam.
Okay, perfect. So recruiting tech, recruiting software. I mean, throw a rock and you're gonna hit 10, 100 of them, right? Like there's so many out there. So before we start getting into the first question, like I know you have a very specific point of view on like, why does software exist? So do you want to tell me a little bit about that first before we start to get into these questions?
So before you dive into what you're using, I think everyone gets caught up with the allure of like new fancy shiny toys, right? We all do, irregardless. And the premise and main purpose of software is to help, and B2B, it's help the end users get their job done, right? And if you break that down, it's like micro workflow tasks. So that's what B2B software exists for, to help people get through their day and do it in the best, smooth, seamless way.
Okay. All right. Question number 1. List and rank the most important, we'll call like jobs to be done or like software functions that recruiters would probably need as part of their day-to-day.
Yeah. So this is where I'm pretty fascinated. We talk about this a lot internally is, recruitment is not all the same. It might seem the same, but it's really not. And if you zoom out, you have basically in-house, which is corporate recruiting and internal recruiting. Then you have agency recruiting. But there's lots of different approaches and workflows and software you need. But by and large, there's lots of commonalities and overlap. And the main software that you're going to need to when you're actually recruiting, everyone thinks the ATS is your core system of record, right? But if we're to kind of put these in order, if you will, like what's the most important of priority, like the main jobs to be done, you break it down and why these are important is, you start out with source. And number 1 by far, I mean, of course you have to get the job order if you're on the agency side or you're in-house, like you have to wait until this role gets approved. But when you start to recruit, jobs to be done and tools like top of the funnel is without candidates and potential candidates in the talent pool and pipeline, you're not going to get to solve the problem. The main job to be done is hiring. Recruiters exist. You have an open role, fill that rec or role. And so in my opinion, and I think a lot of the tools and tech stack where everyone spends most of their time, LinkedIn, the holy grail of, people, directories, in job boards, that's where you go for the talent pool. So now that we've touched on source, and we can go deep into that if we want, everyone in recruiting, especially if we're doing passive and outbound, is source. Most of the corporate in-house recruiting, this is the deviation. That's the most stark difference between agency side and in-house in general, is agencies are headhunting or doing passive outreach and sourcing from their own database, whereas in general, corporate spend a lot more time posting to job boards, post and pray, right? Not always, but sometimes. The second most important tool, in my opinion, and I think in all the conversations I've had, and what truly an organization needs to be successful, is a CRM, a recruiting CRM. And that word is like synonymous with ATS, CRM slash, right? Most people don't know the difference, but the recruiting CRM forms the entire foundation of your entire workflow. That's what creates not just the workflow, but repeatability and consistency. So if you hire one person a year, like who cares? Don't get a recruiting CRM, right? 10 people a year, probably don't need one. If you have a team, you have to build relationships over time and understand the history of those. You have to have a really elegant workflow so that you can handle all the functions across your recruiting organization. So again, if you're in-house corporate, you can have a recruiting CRM. This is the number one most important system. The vast majority of in-house corporate companies do not have a recruiting CRM. They have an ATS or an HCM. They don't even use it. So they just use LinkedIn and job boards. They don't even have it. It's the number one most important software platform for them. On the agency, exec search, RPO, staffing, it's also the most important because they're doing much higher volume. They have a lot more consultants or recruiters involved, and they have two sides of their desk, right? 360 desk are two sides. And so the CRM on the agency side, actually, you have two pieces. You have the business development, so like a sales CRM, which the vast majority of legacy ATS don't have. And so a lot of them are now using HubSpot or Salesforce, or in years before, Job Science, Talent Rover were built on top of Bullhorn. So it's a core component, the sales BD side. And that's just a feature, subset, right? It's inside the modern recruiting CRM. But by and large, when people talk about the recruiting CRM, that's all for the candidate side, the relationships, tracking, the history over time. But to sum it all up, the reason why it's so important is it stores all of your entire business systems, your data, your candidate relationships, the history. And that platform allows you to then have a system where you can create repeatability, you can create scalability. Without that, you will never, ever, ever have the opportunity to do that because you're just doing things one-off, or you're stuck in an ATS where you can't source and, it's just for that job, and so forth. So you can't have modern scale without that.
Yeah. And that's wild to me because one, either you're starting every search from scratch at that point. Like, why would you do that at that point, especially if you're either exec search or something? But my head goes back to like when I was in house for so long, you should have people that you would love to have on your team and your organization someday. And you should be following them. You should be developing that relationship, especially if you're in it for the long haul and you're following different individuals. Like that to me is a no-brainer. Like you should know exactly who they are, what they're doing, their contact information, their path, what they want out of their path, because it might not be a fit right now, but you could know, hey, in 3 years, we're going to be expanding our marketing team. We're going to be needing a new head of CS. Like this person could be perfect. I want to reach out to them at that point. So having a recruiting CRM is like, as you say, it's kind of like you don't always need LinkedIn or sourcing tool. If you know the people, it's just how do you better leverage the information and keeping up with them?
Yep, 100%. And that's like the old, human nature. We're also short-term thinking, right? And all the old guard vets in recruitment are like, no kidding, right? That's your Rolodex back in the day. And you track and build relationship with the best talent. But yeah, now you can do it and throw in way more data and create lots of efficiency and scale. But I love that you said that. It is really long-term thinking, long-term relationship building type of platform.
Yeah.
So I think the next one, just in my opinion, if you have to rank them, right, you have to have your core kind of tech stack or jobs to be done software, but outreach, you could call it outbound recruiting. It's almost a whole new category now. And in years past, it wasn't, because again, most of recruiting has always been done by post and pray. Like, way back in the day when you actually have professional recruitment, you do build talent pools and you go outbound, you build your list. But most recruiting just post jobs and advertise it. Now that everyone's starting to do a lot more outbound recruiting and you having categories and tools building out of this ecosystem, people realize how much more effective it is. But outreach, once you have your list of candidates and you have your CRM and process and system set up, now you need some way to reach out to candidates. Of course, if they applied, you can set up like automations and screen them and set up a call. So that doesn't really pertain to high scale or even not even the high. It doesn't have high scale. You have to have outreach or outbound automation systems, but even like really high touch retained search, the average outreach, I think I've heard different stats, but it can be 13 touches, right? 13. And that's crazy, but it's like you have to follow up many times to start a relationship with top talent and just get them to trust you and be a career advisor over time, right? If you're in-house corporate, you might not be reaching out to top talent that much, but you can over time. And so if you have an effective platform that allows you to build really compelling, personalized, effective, campaigns that reach out to the right candidate, either at the right time, like just-in-time recruitment, or just long-term to build those relationships, that changes the game because it no longer has to be manual. The more recruiters or consultants you have, the more scale you create. And so you have the candidates, you have a CRM system that manages the workflow, and now you have an outreach platform that does that. And I always throw out the tools or the software that I think inspired us to build our own outreach product. But the predictable revenue model years and years ago, this VP of sales at Salesforce said, "Hey, this is crazy. Why are we reaching out manually or just cold calling?" And I don't remember the guy's name, but he was the VP of sales at Salesforce, and he wrote the book Predictable Revenue. And it changed everything for how we do things. Early on, we loaded a list of your ideal ICP prospects, build a sequence, you reach out, and like, oh my God, now I'm flooded with demos, right? Recruitment was the same. So, oh my God, this is going to change recruiting. It's the same as sales. And so SalesLoft, Outreach.io were the first two categories that did that in the sales world. Recruiting is the very same thing. And now everyone said they don't need that. It's not personalized enough, high touch. Now all modern recruiting organizations are adopting those. And a lot of this kind of AI sourcing tools now are starting to kind of, marry those two and bring those into it. But outreach, you have to have an effective outbound recruiting platform.
Yeah. And it's not a binary yes or no, like I'm doing it or I'm not doing it, because it should also be omni-channel. It's if you're only relying on LinkedIn InMail, like good luck. You're going to blend in with so many other recruiters with bad pitches, bad outreach. So you do need to tie this in. And funny enough, like when you and I first started talking, I remember I got, it's like an email from you one point. I'm like, oh, cool, another automated email. But then I got a text not too much longer later. I'm like, interesting. So there's something more to it. Is this actually the person? Like, could be automated, may not be, but it was the ability to reach me in multiple different places, which I could tie that back to marketing. Like you need to meet people where they're at. But I like how most successful recruiters are taking advantage of many different ways to get in touch with the candidates.
I wonder, did I ask you for your consent to opt in, Sam?
You didn't at the time. ATP wasn't a thing yet, but that's a rabbit hole we are going to unpack another time.
A rabbit hole. So good thing at the time. But yeah, and on top of that, though, is you have to have a platform that evolves with the time, right? Certain things will work today. They're not going to work next quarter. They're not going to work next year. And the phone, believe it or not, is actually extremely effective and no one wants to use it. So people that pick up the phone, it's a great channel, right? But how do you create scale? And in the future, there's WhatsApp, there's all sorts of channels. So outreach or outbound, it will evolve, and that's a great thing. But you do need some technology and systems and repeatability to just improve, not only just like, creating efficiencies in the process, but also just improve messaging and A/B test and just make them better and better all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So now everyone's favorite, like if you over all the years in conversations, just talking with recruiting organizations, like the jobs to be done and the pain and low hanging fruit and everyone loves is good contact information finders, right? Everyone has their favorite. There's no perfect solution, silver bullet in general. This space is actually getting pretty exciting. Contact info, though, how can you help me get in touch with candidates in a quick and efficient way, right? And it's really difficult. But when you find that purple squirrel candidate, you're going to have to reach out. And if you're busy and you're working on lots of roles and you reach out with an InMail, or if you reach out with one, blind email, you're never going to hear from them. So having accurate contact information, personal phones and emails and Gmails and multiple different ways to contact is key. Inbound obviously apply. You should have their contact info. People in your database, you get consent, you build their relationship with them over time, you have it. But for the 95% of others out there, you have to go outbound. You need ways to do that. So contact info finders are absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely great. And it's interesting to see how many new ones pop up over time, but there's also just the incumbents. You could name 3 off the top of your head that have been in the space for so long.
When people, I think there's a lack of awareness, in my opinion, when you talk about contact info, and GDPR and CCPA and all these laws are putting a lot more pressure. All of these things are a good thing. But people think all contact info finders are the same. They think they all pull off the same data sources. It might be true to like the lowest hanging fruit, but that's why a lot of these are garbage, or it changes a lot. Finding personal contact info is very difficult. It has to be publicly available. It has to be ethical. Data collection, there's lots of different ways to approach it. So you're going to see a huge deviation from like the very, very best premium data partners in the years ahead, in my opinion, versus most. And there'll be a lot of consolidation and tools will fall off. Everyone assumes like these big name brands, which we're not going to go too far down brands that sell contact info and they're publicly traded and now they're moving in the recruitment space. They're built for corporate sales, professionals. This is all work, really, really good work emails, which are relatively easy to predict and verify, but that's corporate. That's not too many platforms out there that have really good, accurate personal for various reasons. So recruitment, you need personal, but on the BD side, getting new clients, you need work, corporate. And if you can do that at scale, you can, really streamline and scale your workflows. But in general, contact info is, without it, you're kind of dead in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you have to know how to get in touch with people, where to get in touch with them. And then it is, I don't know, the whole concept of, obviously this is going to be very obvious to a lot of recruiters, but like you're not sending a recruiting email to someone's work email address. They're not going to reply, or they're going to forward it over the personal email, which maybe that's a way to hack into getting the personal email just if you write something really good. But an interesting insight from like the data side of me says, I think a lot of people might think, oh, my outreach isn't effective. I have super low open rates. I have super low response rates, but they aren't always looking at the data source of that contact information. You could just have a bunch of bad email addresses, whether they're personal, whether they're work. So like you were saying earlier, the quality of the data source, there are a lot of ... connection points to your other efforts. So bad data in, poor result out is an obvious outcome of that.
Yep, completely. And I mean, now we're getting into where this market is heading, where the future is heading. And I think we as the technology side have a responsibility to improve outcomes, and outcomes are for the candidate side, for all sides, not just our buyers per se, but you don't want to abuse people's time. You don't want to abuse people's privacy. You want to make sure that you're helping find the best mutual match at scale. And you don't want to just, okay, this really good talent, top talent or engineer, or whatever it is, gets spray and prayed by 40 recruiters a day. That's not a good outcome for anybody, right? So over time, tools and systems should help be able to deliver information just in time for the right candidate match, and team and company and hiring, and to make sure that you facilitate that while also respecting, all of the laws and regulations. So I think that's one area we're kind of excited about, and I think people should be interested in too, just because it improves outcomes, and you're not going to have as many bounces, you're not going to have as much no response,
Mm-hmm.
and opt-outs and things like that as well.
Yeah, it's just a different dynamic. So okay, I know you've got a few other tools left before we get into some of the other questions.
Yep. All right. So the number one request that you'll hear all over the place is what's your favorite ATS? They're like, oh God, I hate my ATS. I can't stand my ATS for years and years, right? So you have to have an ATS. If you're in recruiting, you have an ATS. It's mostly compliance, right? And I actually, on the corporate side, most people actually are using more of a HCM if they're big enough, which is, anyone in corporate knows what it is, but they can't stand their ATS. They don't use it for recruiting. So you have to have a recruiting CRM. None of them do because they're not aware of it yet. But some do. or they use sourcing tools and they think it's a recruiting CRM. It's not. But the ATS is just part of, or there's some that are evolving to become more of a next generation ATS. But you have to have some automations and more intelligence just to make the application or tracking of the candidates through the workflow more seamless and effective, right? Those will go away. Legacy ATSs will go away, in my opinion, in the next definitely 10 years, maybe 5. But an ATS is wrapped up in an intelligence platform, and on the agency side, usually it's like a hybrid. You'll have an ATS, but also you have to have a recruiting CRM to handle both sides of the desk. But that's core. We all know it. But it's, kind of becoming boring, and it's just table stakes. Now, the last one for now, like the core tools, jobs to be done, is AI, right? And AI is the tip of everyone's kind of tongue and the buzz in the marketplace. There's different types of AI. There's generative AI. There's different machine learning approaches. There's knowledge graphs that do things. AI is not a one-trick pony. So it goes to, how do you infuse AI across the workflow? Where does it make sense? And what jobs to be done can you help recruiters do and achieve better outcomes more efficiently? It's not the most important, because without the fundamentals first, you could have the greatest AI in the world, but if recruiters don't know how to recruit, they don't know how to source candidates, they don't have to reach out, you're not going to be scalable and repeatable and efficient. You might get lucky and make one placement, great, because AI told you, but you're not going to really learn how to do the rest of the process. So the candidate, top talent, won't trust you. So you have to have the fundamentals. You have to have a good system, a good process. And where AI is also going, it's evolving quickly and rapidly, is if you already have an unbelievable system, if you're already working on the world-class recruiters, world-class process, systems, fundamentals, now you add AI on top of that, your AI is going to get a lot smarter and more intelligent much faster, because you have your recruiting CRM with all of the data. You're able to mine that data and leverage that data in different ways. So when you create a new search or new searches that are similar, you're able to reuse and resurface some of that data. If you're doing internal mobility, right? The AI is really good systems that truly do use AI. It's going to kind of adapt based on your own preferences and specialisms, and there's just so many different inputs. So you have what you put into it, how you use it, and how you learn to combine both kind of manual tuning and searching and Boolean, along with AI is really important. Eventually, the GPT and generative AI too is going to, in my opinion, will recruiters that are still kind of doing manual typing of emails and outreach messages and trying to A/B test those, like that will go away. AI is going to get to a point where that's a waste of recruiters' time to do that. So
yeah, it's the easiest way that I like to think of it is I call it the multiplier. So if you have poor practices, poor workflow, poor data, poor whatever, think of multiplying 1 by 1 or 1 by 100. It doesn't matter. You're still going to end at 1. But if you have a team that's running at 5x, at 10x of something, and then you start multiplying that, that's where that team takes off further, because they're multiplying the already incredible behaviors, incredible processes, incredible procedures, and that's why they keep going even further. All right, so we've gone through the list. As we said, it's not exhaustive. There's definitely going to be different tools, tech needed when you start to really get into the different segments, but we've gone through the core items. So now how should we be thinking about, like, hey, I've got all these tools. How do I know, like, if my tool is effective, if I should use this one, if I should use that one? What are some of the like indicators or items that they should be looking at?
yeah, so I kind of want to circle back. Of course, as Sam alluded, there's lots of other tools that we left out. There's SMS texting, which is super important tool, and the phone, like the phone and SMS, the fact that it's neither, right? We kind of roll that under the umbrella of outreach and outbound. And then if you have back office, like onboarding and timesheets and payroll, or like the back office side of things are mission critical for those. But for recruitment activities and sourcing, I think we touched on it. Now, kind of onto the question you just asked, how to tell if a tool is effective. So I put the entrepreneur, SaaS entrepreneur hat back on, and it's all about usage, right? We're maniacal about usage. If people are not using something, then either it's not effective or you haven't really developed it in the right way to solve a true problem that matters. But you hear it a lot, especially with ATSs, over and over and over. It's like, can you, how is your team like your current ATS? And like, well, we don't even use it at all. Yeah, I can't tell you the percentage of times I hear it. What do you mean your team doesn't use your system of record? So usage is absolutely the most important. But the best way to truly tell if a tool is effective is results, like outcomes. I always start with outcomes. And what does that mean when you're recruiting is like how many hires and placements and what's the efficacy of those? How quickly is it? How quickly are you able to make a hire, and how consistent, and the quality of those hires? And I know everyone freaks out over the quality of hire metric. It's not about the metric. It's about are you helping deliver the very best possible mutual hire that lasts a long time, that is a phenomenal fit for that role. It's a great fit for their career path. But it's just the results, the outcomes, and usage of the actual software. You can also anecdotally just ask, your users, your end users, are you happy, using it? And are there less complaints? And do you, if you use it all day, every day, do you love it? And so I think that's something that a metric and measure that people often aren't even asking anymore, because most of the software was HR software was always, they hated it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, oh my God, I love this. I love my job. It makes me happier. It's easier to do it. I have better morale. I'm more productive and efficient, and I use it and I'm getting great results.
Yeah. So it's the triangulation of exactly like you said. It's the quantitative. What's the usage? That number is going to tell you one thing. The qualitative, do you enjoy using it? Because there's often times you're stuck with the tool, like you have to use it. So the usage will be up, but that doesn't mean you enjoy it, that you wish you didn't have something else. And then the results to round it out, like, is it doing what's promised? Is it helping your recruiters achieve those results? So looking at all three of those points together, there's no one that's more or less important than the other. You really do have to look at it holistically from that point of view. And so to kind of tie back into the qualitative side of it, and then the results as well, is like, well, how much manual work is required after using the tool? Because hypothetically, like when you think back to the primitive times, if like tools are designed to make work easier, so that should be the intention of if you go and purchase something. Otherwise, you'd just be doing it the manual way. So that's something I always like to look at is, after you've bought this product, this tool, whatever it is, how much manual work is still required after using that tool? So that's another question that you should be thinking about. So like any thoughts in some different areas that could help you identify, like, is this doing what's promised, or am I still having to do a good bit of legwork on my own?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. And I think modern marketers too, Sam, like yourself, you've been using pretty sophisticated tech for a long time. So there's, the manual components of modern marketing is kind of, been not completely eliminated, but it's just so much more radically efficient than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
But recruitment, the vast majority of recruiters and recruiting teams and organizations is still so much of it's manual. And, when 10 years ago, I was just blown away at how manual and inefficient and like rule of thumb everyone operated by. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There's no automation or systems in place, and it's a pretty repeatable process, right? The 80-20, most of it. So I think now you're finally getting to places where you can do that. But we're obviously clearly biased with our belief in what a talent intelligence platform does, but you're still, when you have lots of different duct tape solutions that were never built in one unified workflow, even if some of these sub vertical solution, like best in breed or not, like you have, okay, we've streamlined part of this process. We have an outbound recruiting tool. Okay. But now you still have to export that data. You still have to go get a Zapier. You still have to try to get an engineer that you have to pay to fix. And, it's constantly breaking. You have two users that have access to this one tool. They have to constantly export things and try to import it and get fields to, merge. And it's just constant pain in the neck. So measuring manual work for some end users, if you're not looking across every single user across your entire, organization, especially if you're hiring a lot of people just to help enhance the performance or support your core recruiting or consultants, that's a big eyesore, like immediate red flag, right? Especially if you have the more team members you have supporting the other users, that's a big flag. Also, just the more tools, if you have Zapier or third-party consultants, like, hey, we need to bring in a ton of people to figure all this complexity out and manage these systems. sometimes that's important, but not necessarily. Like recruiting doesn't have to be that difficult anymore. So those are some flags to consider and explore. And not, sometimes you need consultants to help take it to the next level or things, but not about your tech stack anymore. It's a very different world in 2024, moving into 24 than it was, the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I remember like, as a marketer, I used to get this way, and even now I see it with some of the different platforms out there. It's like, hey, we just released 25 new filters that you can use when you source candidates. It's like, well, cool. Now I can go and filter by these things, but I still have to wade through the 8,000 results, if lucky, of using those filters. And the ideal candidate might be on page 799 out of 800 of those. But if you can, like, again, a little biased towards us, but how do you get a tool that really does make your life easier? So can you rank those in some form or fashion? Because again, there's so many things that's like, well, yeah, it checks the box, but there's still so much of that manual work added on top of it, where at the end of the day, it's like, did that filter really make your life easier or not? All right. So we've gone through 3 of the big ones that I wanted to ask you. And then these last 2 are a little bit more geared towards our listeners. And after 7,000 conversations that you've had with recruiters, the little bit that I've had in the time I've been here, I always like to say, it's like, this is where you have to layer on critical thinking. So the next question that we like to ask is like, how long have you been using this tool or this process? Are you simply continuing with it because it's what you've always used, what you've always done? Because if so, it's like, yeah, it might be great, but has it evolved? Your business has evolved over time. Your needs have evolved over time. Your clients' needs have evolved over time. The candidates have evolved over time. Is your tool keeping up with that? Or is it simply, I'm comfortable with it, I know how it works, but there's often those 2 items don't run parallel if you were to put them on a line chart. So you have to understand like where the efficiencies are. They trending in the right direction together, or do you really need to start reevaluating and thinking about, maybe there is another way, maybe there's something else out there that now that I've got this new pain that has come up or something else. I don't know what I don't know, but should I know if I do want to continue to be in this role in 5 years?
That's a phenomenal question. And I think it's important for any business owner or leader or manager, any day-to-day, anyone who's listening to this wants to improve and get better. And I think this is one of the most fascinating things I've learned over the years with all these conversations. I always ask, one of the questions is like, why are we having this conversation? And it doesn't, sometimes people are further in the process. Sometimes people are final stages of evaluating and ready to make their decision. But ultimately it's because people genuinely, sincerely want to get better, right, at what they do. They genuinely do. And if given the opportunity to improve, people will. And they just need the platform and environment to do that. And sometimes their leadership might get in the way and, kibosh certain, like, no, we can't have these certain tools. And here's why. But everyone is desperate to get better. That recruiters want to get better. They need an edge. Things are hard and difficult. If humans and recruiters are given the opportunity to get better, they will. They just need the opportunity. They need the platform. And so that's what they're thirsty for. And the question always is, though, is fear, right, of change. And it's like, well, we're used to it and we're comfortable. Well, the organizations who stay in their comfort zone won't have jobs, right? And they're not going to be effective, and they're not going to be the first recruiters and people that are called to come help when a new job order search or the company's looking for the best of the best, right? And so you have to grow, you have to evolve. And the recruiting vocation has been the same for decades. The way to get better and the way to improve, the way to get more intelligent and efficient is you have to roll into, new technologies and ways of thinking and doing things. And you break down systems, you break down a process. It's not always just this super innovative things. It's a lot of it. It's part workflow, it's part data, it's part, we talk about the whole talent intelligence era is coming, and this is going to happen. And so it's not the way that things have always been done. It's brand new. It's never before. We talk about this a lot. It's a brand new category. No one's done it. But again, if you give people the platform, the opportunity, they want to get better, it's happening. An entire generation of recruiters are going to learn on this. And in 10, 15 years, people won't even remember how they used to do it, right?
Yeah. And that is a perfect segue into this last question. It's something right out of you that you told me when we were talking about the talent intelligence workflow is, if there was something out there that could 2x, 3x, 5x the results that you or your team are getting, would you be open to change? And that's exactly to your point of that. Sometimes people just, they don't know. It's a new category. They didn't, like, would you know to search for something like talent intelligence platform? Are you still thinking I need a sourcing tool, I need an outreach tool, and you're doing this piecemeal function? So yeah, I think that kind of rounds out the 5. So hopefully this was helpful for a lot of our listeners. You know, I know it's mid-September when we're recording this. This will probably be out in a few weeks from now, but like Q4 is already here. 2024 is right around the corner. The holidays come through quick. So as I do start thinking about 2024, like what should you be using in terms of how to make your life easier to get better results with your job and anything else, I'd say these are 5 pretty good questions that you should really sit down for a couple hours, piece of paper and a pen, or if you like computer, go hop in with your laptop, grab a cup of coffee, get a good playlist going, and have a conversation with yourself and really start going through some of these to understand what do you need as you look into the new year. So any parting wisdom words or any question number 6 from your thousands of conversations that you want to add into this?
You think I'd know more after all those
beauties and simplicity.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No more. Yeah. Thanks for the episode, Sam. Great episode. And yeah, hope everyone has a great weekend ahead.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you as always for joining, everyone. That's a show. So until next time.